come to take my stand. Yeah, I am a roaring lamb. I am a roaring lamb, and the time has come to take my stand.
Hello, I'm Donna Skell.
And I'm Tiffany Ross.
Welcome to Roaring Lambs. Let me ask you, do you use your story to share the difference that Jesus has made in your life? Do you reach out to others and encourage them with the difficult things that they may be facing, how Jesus worked out some difficult things in your life? That's what a Roaring Lamb is all about, and we're excited about our guest today. So imagine this. Your first husband is unfaithful to you. Your second husband is diagnosed with an incurable disease, but dies in a horrific car accident. But our good Father allows you to have the family that you always dreamed about. Stay tuned for an amazing story of courage, commitment, and faithfulness.
This episode of Roaring Lambs is brought to you by LifeStoriesCompany.com.
Today we have Heather Dennis with us on our program. Heather was born in Minnesota, but she's been here about 16 years. And in college, she studied neuroscience and geology. She currently works as a sales director for a large healthcare company. And she's married to her husband, Beck, and has two beautiful daughters. In her spare time, Heather likes traveling and hiking, especially in our national parks. So Heather, it is a joy to have you on the show. Tiffany and I have known you for a while, and one thing I must say about you, whenever I see you, you have a beautiful smile on your face and you are full of joy and you seem happy and content. But when I really got to hear your story, I realized how much grief and hard things that you have been through. So we love to start at the beginning of the story. So will you share with us a little bit about your upbringing and your childhood?
Sure. I, as you said, was born in Minnesota, and at an early age, my parents divorced. I was about 5 years old when that happened, and I didn't realize at the time until much later how much that really had an impact on me as a young girl. I would see my dad twice a week, and for him it was important to bring us to church. So every Sunday and every Wednesday we'd go to church, and that was it was a good routine. It was nice. I had a lot of really good friends at church, and for a while that seemed to work out okay, although I did miss my dad, and as I grew older, I'd say probably those preteen years is when things got a little bit trickier, and my dad moved away, and that was really hard on me, that he moved from Minnesota all the way to Texas.
Wow. Heather, you know, I am a product of a divorced family, and so I know what it feels like for a daughter to miss her father, just miss that strength, you know. And so for you, you wound up moving, correct, to be near him?
I did, yes. So in those early teenage years after my dad moved to Texas, things were harder for me. I think my mom and I, we just have opposite personalities, so we clashed, and then I was a teenager going through the lovely teenage stage, shall we say, where, you know, you're trying to take control of your life, but you're not really ready to, you know, to leave the nest. And so my mom and I clashed a lot, and I felt like if I moved to be with my dad, life would miraculously get better, and so I did. So I moved across the country to live with my dad, and things didn't miraculously get better. Things were still hard. My dad traveled so much for work, I didn't see him anyways.
Wow.
And in my home in Minnesota, my my core group of friends was more my church friends. And so when we moved to Texas and my dad and stepmom took me to their church, I thought, oh, I'll meet some new friends and things will be okay. But I just didn't seem to click with the teenagers there. I felt like an outcast, and it was really hurtful for me because I was so used to that, my friends and that kind of, I don't know how to describe it, that loving church environment that I just didn't get in the same church in Texas. And so I thought in my 16, 17-year-old brain, well, if this is what church is like in Texas, then forget it, church is not for me. And I turned my back away from church.
And what did that look like when you went Heather's way instead of God's way?
Well, not things that I'm proud of for sure, but so I went off to college and I thought, woohoo, I can do things how I want to do things, finally, for the first time in my life. And I did things I shouldn't have done. I got into partying and drinking, and my grades weren't doing so great, surprise, because of that. I met the person who was then going to become my first husband. We moved in together before we got married, things that you're not supposed to do. Got married young. I was 22 and married, and he was not a believer, which at the time I was like, that's not a really big deal for me. But I think the thing that really was the most hurtful was he had a wandering eye, shall we say, and that as a woman, that it really gets you in a way that it's hard to describe. But it was that and other things that ultimately I ended up filing for a divorce in my mid-20s, needing a fresh start.
Mm-hmm. So Heather, it's understandable. You're 22. And I don't know many 22-year-olds who are genuinely ready for marriage, without God as the center, let alone, with Him. So what did that time look like for you? It must have been, on one hand, probably a relief in some ways to know, okay, this was not working, it's over, but some disappointment, discouragement. What was that like for you?
I definitely felt a lot of anger over what had happened, how I was treated, how it made me feel. I mean, I felt subhuman. I didn't feel like I had any worth or value or beauty as a woman. I mean, it was awful how I felt, and so I was angry. But at the same time, I felt free again. Like, okay, I'm done with that. I can move forward. And so I did, and ended up finding somebody new and wonderful, a man named Jason. He was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. He, that built-in set of respect and dignity and honor. He treated me wonderfully. Everything. He was the type of person that, he never met a stranger that wasn't a friend, right? Just that very lovable personality. And so I fell head over heels in love with him, and come to find out shortly after we met that he had got diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease.
Wow.
And how old at the time was he?
He was 33.
Wow.
So to compare, that's around the same time Michael J. Fox got his diagnosis with young onset Parkinson's disease. So it's very young. And he told me, he said, I've got this forever. You and I were just dating, you can leave. You don't have to stay. Well, I was already like, gushy over this guy. So I was like, I'm staying, this is not, we'll work it out. And we got married, and I became his number one advocate. Anything that he needed from, a health-wise, doctor's appointments and things. I mean, I was doing all of that for him. But it's still Parkinson's disease. It's still hard. He progressed, and it got to a point where medicine was, it was trying to juggle the different medications, what's going to be right, how often to take it, when to take it. It's very complex. I mean, they say Parkinson's is like a snowflake disease. It's very unique. Every person has to be treated differently.
Can I ask you,
Yeah.
what did the decline and the depression look like for him, and how quickly did that happen?
So for him, the decline, for a year or two, things seemed okay. The medicines were doing their job. And after that is when things got harder. So things like, for him, he had stiffness on the right side of his body. So he walked with kind of a limp in his one leg. His right hand, he lost a lot of the dexterity. So things like trying to tie your shoes, trying to button up a shirt, things like brushing your teeth became a challenge for him. And he would, because of that Marine Corps, I can do anything mentality, I mean, nothing would ever let him down. He used to say, I go by my blood type. Be positive.
That's good.
That was his personality. But I know it was hard on him, and especially when there was one particular medication that had some really difficult side effects that caused what's called dyskinesias. So a lot of moving of the body in ways that don't really make sense to you or I, and it was a challenge. But he got involved with the Adaptive Training Foundation, which was a nonprofit that focused on helping him through that disability, through a lot of exercises, strength training, things like that, and that really reinvigorated him. And he graduated from there feeling like a new man again. And the thing that makes that so tragic is what happened shortly thereafter. As you alluded to in the introduction, he was working that afternoon. I was on a business trip. I was out of town. And I remember very vividly, I was at Chicago O'Hare Airport, and I get a phone call from Jason's cousin. And he said to me, Jason ran his car off the road. He's a little bumped up. Paramedics are going to take him to the hospital. And so I thought, okay, it sounds like it's not that bad. Don't know why he ran his car off the road, but it sounds like the paramedics are just doing their job. They got to take him to go checked out. It's not going to be a big deal. I landed in St. Louis, and I was on the phone with my dad at baggage claim, and my dad said to me, come home immediately. Jason's very sick. And I was very confused. I said, what do you mean he's sick? He just ran his car off the road. This doesn't make any sense. So I grabbed my bag and I went running up the escalator to the check-in, the ticketing, but it was late at night. Everyone had left. It was 11:30 at night or something. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was thinking I have to get home. So I called the travel agent. I got on a flight 5 a.m. the next morning, and I get home and I go to the hospital immediately. And I'm brought back to the ICU where, I see my husband just unconscious, tubes in him, and trying to put two and two together. So they said that, he must have grown unconscious behind the wheel. We don't know why. And when he ran his car off the road, that it was a hot day, and the engine shuts off after airbags deploy. It's a safety feature, and he was in his car for over half an hour, and it was 100 degrees outside. So his body temperature got too hot, and when the paramedics got there, his temperature was 107 degrees. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, can anybody even survive that? And so as they were doing everything they could to see if they could reverse course. And when I got there, his kidneys had started to fail. So they put him on dialysis. And I remember sitting there in the hospital room next to the bed, holding his hand and just praying to God. And mind you, I had not prayed to God in, 15, 16 years at that point. But I was praying for a miracle. I was begging. I said, Lord, do anything. I will do anything. Please just save my husband. Don't let this happen to him. And it's like it was one thing after the next. And I remember that night, the doctor said, well, I don't think he'll make it to the morning. And so that whole night I sat next to his bedside sobbing, just praying. And in the morning came and he was still alive, and I thought, oh, we've made it, he's going to make it. But that wasn't the case. And so when they said his heart is failing, I just climbed up in bed next to him, and I just held him. And it's so hard to, that was my husband. This is the man I was supposed to be with the rest of my life. And I just held him until he breathed his last breath. And I sat there thinking, is this it? Is that it? No, he's gonna keep going. Like I still was holding out for that miracle, because I know God is a great big God. But that was not his plan. And he did pass away. And I thought to myself, I'm a 31-year-old widow.
And at this time, of course, you hadn't had any children with Jason, and it was just you. And so I just, my heart breaks for you, Heather. I know that had to be incredibly hard situation, feeling so all alone. And as you mentioned, you had been kind of apart, separated from God for a long time, and now the Lord allows your husband to be gone. And I see it as you have two choices, really. You either run to God or you run from God. A lot of people would blame God or attach some of the blame that he didn't answer your prayer. So what happened to you at this point?
So at that point, I had heard, I actually knew that on the Sunday before his car accident, Jason had gone to church. The owner of the Adaptive Training Foundation was speaking at his church that weekend, and he invited all of the athletes, and Jason wanted to go. So Jason went, and he told me, I was out of town, so I was not there. He told me how amazing it was, and we should go. And so I at that time, before he passed, I said, oh, that sounds great. We'll start going to that church. We had talked about going, we talked, oh, we should go to church, especially once we have kids. It's the right thing to do, right? That was, that was my thought. It's the right thing to do. And I found out afterward that night that he went to church, he accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior. And so for me, it gave me, of course, that relief of knowing, okay, I know he's in heaven, I know he was saved, but I thought, if that church had such a profound impact on him, I need to be there. And so that Sunday, and every Sunday after that, every Wednesday after that, I was at church. But I will tell you, it was the hardest thing for me to do, because I was so lost. And it was hard for me to go, and especially to worship. I felt I was so heartbroken, and the hole that was left in my heart was so big and so deep that I was desperate to do anything to fill that hole. And at that time, I was not quite ready to give my life to God. And so I filled that hole with the things I filled it with back in college, things that I knew I shouldn't be filling that hole with, and alcohol and other. It's like I knew it was wrong, but at the time I didn't know, I didn't feel like I knew any better. And so I delayed my grief journey because I avoided it. But eventually God gave me a quick kick in the bottom. I will say that what really opened my eyes in that journey was Good Friday service. So I had been going to church months at that point, and I felt God tugging on me. I felt God asking, just give in. And for me, I felt like, but if I I have control of my life right now. If I give control over to you, to me that was scary, because I felt like if I do things my way, I have control. But we all know ultimately none of us is really in control. But anyway, so it was Good Friday service. I'm at church because I was at church every waking moment they were open. And when the pastor was describing for me when Jesus all the things, Jesus led a perfect life, and then that he was led to the cross, and he was crucified, and he died for my sins, mine. It's like in that moment, the veil gets lifted from my eyes, and for the first time, I saw what Jesus had done for me. And I saw all of the bad things that I had done in my life, and I felt deep remorse and shame for those things, but then I felt so relieved that Jesus did that for me. For me, of all, I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing, but he did that for me so that I don't have to die.
Right.
And Heather, you just described the good news. So often we just gloss over that if we have been raised in church and Jesus died for my sins. But when you really pause and look at your life and say, wow, all of that and more, what I might do in the future, you've taken it all. What a burden lifted, right? And so I love the fact that God just revealed himself brand new for you in that moment. And you really grabbed hold of it. Was it hard to give up the alcohol and the other things?
So the alcohol was hard a bit because I gave my life to Christ, and on Resurrection Sunday I was baptized, and I definitely felt like a new person. And it's so hard to describe because I grew up in church. I had heard the stories, but for me this was so real. And especially that baptism, I felt like that the old self died and I'm a new person. And God, as he was, and in his way, he was working on me as well with the alcohol. And I had another aha moment not too long after that, a couple months later, where it dawned on me that I was using alcohol in a way that was not right. I was drinking too much. I was using it to numb myself still, even after that. And it was, on my grief journey. And when he opened my eyes and I realized I need to quit, I quit cold turkey. And I went home immediately and threw out bags and bags and bags of of alcohol that I had at home and gave it up.
And you have a little saying that I like about that. What is that?
I do have a saying. My saying is, when in doubt, leave it out.
That's so good. And sometimes when we know that the Lord has impressed upon us to give something up, the idea that we have to give it up, that it's going to be hard to give it up, that we have to do it in our own strength is just so wrong, because when you have the Lord in your life and he wants you to remove something from your life, he does it with you. He does it for you. He can take the desire away. And it seems like your baptism, when you came out of the water, a new creation, and you had Jesus as the center of your life, and together you were able to give up some of the things that you knew were wrong. And when you did, God was able to put more good blessings in your life, right?
He did. So at that point, I had done a lot of healing on my grief journey, and I had just gotten to that point where I felt comfortable. Which I feel like now, anytime God makes you feel comfortable, he's just preparing you for the next thing, right? So I got to a point though where I said, God, I'm okay. I am single. I was widowed, but even if this is all that there is, I felt comfort and I felt peace with that. And then God introduced me to Beck. And we met at Bible study, which is like, okay, the perfect place to meet your future husband is Bible study. And but I was really nervous about opening my heart up again to somebody. When you've gone through that kind of pain,
Yes.
you really don't want to go through it again. It's hard enough to go through once. I don't recommend it if you can avoid it. But anyways, it was hard. So I remember even while I was dating Beck, I just went to God in prayer and I said, God, if this is right, just let me know, give me some peace with this. And so, as we kind of story goes, we dated, we got married, we knew we wanted kids. And so now we have, not just one, but two little baby girls. My youngest is 5 months now. So he definitely does bless you in so many ways, in ways that I never, if I looked back at my life when I was in my, early to mid 20s, struggling, I never would have thought that I'd be in this place right here, right now, with a faithful, loving Christian husband and my two beautiful little baby girls.
Yes.
I mean, it's God can definitely redeem you and bless you.
I have a question that I think maybe a lot of people wonder. If you have been widowed and then remarried, obviously the tears come with Jason and what happened and how much you loved him and all of that. How does that play into marriage now with Beck? When you just have maybe sad memories about that or fond memories of Jason, how does that feel with him?
Yeah, I think that, when we dated, I was very open with Beck about my history. I mean, he knew that I had been widowed. And so there were even some times I remember when we would sit down to watch a movie or something, and it could be something as benign as like a kid's, cartoon,
Yes.
but the dog died, and I'm like, it makes me think of Jason. I think because we're so open with one another that there's the ability to have those moments of insecurity, right? And so I think that that's something that for people who have been widowed and are wanting to, have that again moment, falling in love again, that I think it's just a matter of being open and honest with that person and letting them know, this is a part of my past. I think the other thing too is I talked to a pastor before we got married, before Beck and I got married, because I wanted to make sure that I was not bringing baggage into a marriage, because that's not fair to put on Beck either. And the pastor kind of gave me a clean bill of spiritual health, so to speak, and blessed us with our, in our marriage. So it's something now that, most of the times when I'm not sharing my testimony, I can talk about Jason without the tears, but yeah.
And can I just say, we know Beck and your girls.
Yes.
You are a beautiful, joyful family, and it's just a delight to see you all together and to see the Lord's blessing on that.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of what a friend of mine told me. Two widowed people, and they went to the pastor because they were going to marry, and he said something so wise. He said, love never divides, it multiplies. And so you don't take your love that you had for Jason and divide it in half. You multiply it. And so there's enough love for you to give to Beck and the girls, and it shows, because you are a beautiful family. So in the final moments that we have, is there any words of wisdom or encouragement that you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, what I would say to you that are out there at home, no matter what circumstance you're in right now, and no matter what it is that you have in your past that you've done, to know that if you reach out to God, that He will be there for you, no matter what it was that you did in your past, that He can redeem you and that He can restore you.
And if you've never made a commitment to Jesus Christ, you could do that right now. Maybe you've been where Heather's been. Maybe you're teetering on, well, I grew up in church, but I'm really not active in church right now, and I'm not really in that relationship with God. All of that can change right now. Because if you will give your heart to Jesus, if you will ask Him to come into your life and take control of your life, that's a prayer that He is just waiting for you to pray. He's so willing. He's so anxious. He wants to show you how beautiful he can make your life. But it will take you inviting him into your life. So maybe you want to do that right now. Just bow your heads and say, Jesus, I want you to come into my life. I know I've gone my own way. I know I've done things my way, but I know that your way is so much better. So thank you, Jesus, for coming into my life, for allowing your shed blood to cover my sins so that I can spend eternity with you in heaven, but I can spend all my days on this earth with you now. And if you've done that, we would be so excited to know about it. We would encourage you to reach out to Tiffany and I. You can email us at info@roaringlambs.org. We'd love to hear that Heather's story what made a difference for you today, and we will pass that word on to Heather. So reach out to us, but most of all, make a difference in somebody else's life today. Go out there and roar about the goodness of God.
At Life Stories Company, our passion is to preserve your story in a personal memoir. These beautiful books can be shared with both friends and family for generations. For the past 28 years, we have helped over 200 clients share their history and wisdom. As a Christian, what better testimony than to share how God has led you and provided for you? Visit us at lifestoriescompany.com. Sharing your story and honoring God. lifestoriescompany.com.